Good afternoon. Welcome to today's CI Tools webinar. My name is Josh Osborne and I'm the Product Manager for the CI Tools here at Central Innovation. And this is a weekly webinar that we run to look at things to do with the CI Tools. If you've been here for the last couple of weeks, you may know that we're looking at the Doors and Windows tool. First week we looked at Windows, last week we looked at Doors, and this week we're going to be looking at scheduling. So we're going to create some schedules, show you what you can do with the schedules, how you can make them display and that sort of thing. So that's the schedules using the window and door tool, that is. Everything that we're going to be looking at today is, we're working in ArchiCAD 28, but it's also available in previous versions of ArchiCAD as well. I don't think there's anything in here that isn't also available in ArchiCAD 27 that we'll see today. So yeah, Doors and Windows scheduling is what we're going to cover. Just before we start, if you have any questions about anything that comes up during the session, please feel free to enter those in the chat panel in wherever you're streaming this, and I will come back and check on those towards the end, see if I can answer those online. And if you think of any questions after the fact, you can send an email through to us on nz.support@centralinnovation.com, and those will make their way through to me as well. Also, if you have any suggestions for other things you'd like to see covered during this webinar session, please let me know as well. As I say, we're going through the Windows and Door tool at the moment, but once we've finished up with that, I will be moving on to something else. So if you have an idea for what you would like that to be, let me know that way as well. That'd be great. With that out of the way, though, let's get into the window and door tool. So in the previous two sessions, we have looked at the windows and the door tools themselves. We haven't jumped into all of the settings, but we've covered most of how they work and why you'd want them to work. So the next thing we're going to look at is scheduling those windows and doors that you do place. So you can see I have a bunch of windows and doors here already. Now, obviously, if you already have used ArchiCAD quite a bit, you will know that there is a window and door schedule built into ArchiCAD. The interactive scheduler will produce a schedule of windows and doors, including our windows and doors, no trouble. So if you are already using that and happy with that, that's great. All of our windows and doors will work totally fine with the ArchiCAD scheduling tool. So you can continue using that. However, we do have our own scheduling tool, which is part of the Windows and Door tool. And the reason that you might want to do this, well, there's a couple of different reasons, which we'll cover as we go through. The main one is just if you happen to like the way it presents windows and doors, it presents them in a different way that we sort of developed to the kind of thing that our customers here locally in New Zealand wanted and that our international customers that we had were asking for historically. So it presents itself in a different way, which we'll see soon. It also allows for a couple of nice little additions like schedule notes and adding calculated values and that sort of thing, which to some extent you can do with the other scheduling tool, just as a little bit more integrated with the actual windows and doors in our system. But there's nothing to stop you from using the ArchiCAD scheduler. So if you're concerned about that at all, just keep using that. It will work fine. Excuse me. So to get started with a schedule, first of all, we're going to go to the CI Tools menu, head to Doors and Windows, and we're going to open the Schedule Manager. Excuse me. And from there, we're going to choose to create a new schedule. We can give that a title. Let's just call this Test Schedule 1. And I'm not going to go through any of the settings first. I'm just going to show you what it looks like so we know what we're dealing with before we jump into the settings. So leaving this as it is, I'm just going to hit OK and let that schedule generate. It asks me if I want it to build the schedule. So I'm going to say yes on that one. There's a migrated project, so it asks me about migrating as well, but you generally won't get that. And this is what the schedule looks like that it produces. So as I said, it presents the information in a different way, and you can see what that way is here. So we get elevation views of all of our windows and doors. And you can see that all of the elevation views are labeled with their ID, and they are dimensioned as well. So we see those applied to all of the windows and doors. Now this will work on CI Tools windows and doors and ArchiCAD windows and doors as well. So you can see down here, this one here, it may look like an error, but it's actually an empty opening object. So this is just part of the standard ArchiCAD default library, the empty opening. It's just a hole in the wall, basically, and it has successfully scheduled that as well. It is representing it correctly because all it is a hole. But if you do have any windows and doors that are using the default library, or in fact any other library, maybe you've made your own door and window objects, maybe you've downloaded them from some other website or something, all of those should also work with our window and door scheduling as well. So even if you're not using our windows and doors for doing your actual windows and doors, but you happen to like the way the schedule looks, you could use it entirely just for scheduling as well. That is also an option. So this is how it looks. And yeah, it has this sort of unique presentation style of showing it all as elevations, which are dimensioned nicely. We also have a space underneath each of these to put annotations, which we'll look at in a little bit. So jumping back into the settings, let's have a look at what we have control over here. So first of all, we have criteria. Will be familiar to anyone who's used the ArchiCAD scheduler already. Essentially, this lets us choose what windows and doors we want to be included in the schedule. So test schedule 01. The criteria currently are that we are including windows and doors. So you can just untick whichever boxes you don't want. So you could have a door schedule and a window schedule separately. We're going to stick with both for now. We can filter by element ID. So if we turn this option on, we can hit the edit filter button, and then we can create some filters for the element ID. So we could say any element that starts with a D or starts with a W. And I think in my case, they don't actually start with either D or W, so this is not going to give us anything. But in a lot of cases, you will have something like this. Perhaps you want to have a schedule that includes just your exterior doors, and you use an ID system where they start with EX, for instance. You can include those, and that will let you schedule just those parts. So we're still including all of our doors and windows, but only the ones that meet this filter criteria. So you can build up as much of these as you need. We've got starts with, contains, end with, and then the opposite of each as well. So doesn't contain, doesn't start with, and doesn't end with. So if you do have, say, for instance, you want to exclude just the external ones, but you have multiple different other types of ID, you could choose to say does not start with EX, and you'll just not have those. So it's relatively self-explanatory. If you're used to the idea of sort of logic filtering in ArchiCAD or in just software in general, this will make sense once you get to that. So we can set up element ID filters there. I'm going to turn that off because it's not going to do anything useful for me here. We can also filter by layer combination. So if we turn this option on, you'll get this button below Ungrade, which just says store current layers. So the way that this one works is that you need to, in whatever view you're in, set the layers that you want to be visible, then open the Schedule Manager dialog, turn this option on and press Store Current Layers, and it'll store whatever the current layer setup is. So whatever things are visible and whatever things are hidden, that's what it will pick up and save to be used for this schedule. So it will essentially not show any windows and doors that you can't see in the view that you're looking at when you open the manager here. So that one does that there. And then this filter, as you can probably tell, filters by stories. So you can choose which story you want. We can have either all stories or a specific story. So again, if you want to filter out specific windows and doors, say you only want to show doors that are on the ground level and you don't use an element ID that makes it obvious they're on the ground level, you can just filter by story this way instead. And then finally, we have an option to filter by renovation status as well. So by default, it will include everything. But if we wanted not to include the demolished doors, for instance, or something like that, we can do that quite easily. by turning off the filter that we want below here. Then over on the right, this is not strictly the criteria, but it's very related. So we've got the setting for it here. We've got the option to collate matching items. So if I look behind here, you can see I actually have a couple of windows here that are similar. Those ones are similar, but not the same. These ones here look like they're the same. So 210 and 212, you can see in the background here, look to be identical. So they are the same height and width, and the separation is the same width and everything. So these look identical. There's not really any reason for us to have this elevation view occurring multiple times in our schedule. So what we can do is we can say to collate all of those items together. So we say collate the items, and then we have a bunch of options to essentially add exceptions to that rule. So they'll be collated, but if the material doesn't match, then you should still what we call isolate them here, but we should still make them not be the same items. So for instance, if 210 and 212 were identical, except one of them was painted white and the other one was painted black, if we turned on the isolate materials option, they would not collate together, even though they're identical otherwise. And the same applies for any of these other options here as well. So you can isolate based on the hardware. So that's the handles, kick plates, and the plates behind the handles. The wall thickness, so that's the thickness of the wall that they are placed in, obviously. Isolate by pens and fills, so that's attributes that actually display the windows and doors. The handing, so if it's left or right-handed, and the orientation, so if it opens inward or outwards. Those can all be isolated separately. It will default to have orientation isolated because you do probably want that in most cases, but you can turn that off as well if you like. So with those selected, if I hit OK, it's going to ask me if I want to update my schedule, which I do. So I'll just click yes. And then when that regenerates, we will see the difference. So it looks like 210 and 212 actually do have some sort of difference that we're not seeing in that view there. So those aren't being collated together, but you can see 204 and 215, which were separate items before, and now being stuck together. So you see the single item as before, but then we see below that it's listing 204 and 215. So those two have both been grouped together, or collated together rather, in the schedule. And it looks like those are the only two that are identical in this case. So we have that going on there. That's what criteria does. Moving down to the next part, we have the layout options. So this lets us choose what layout sheet we want it to fit into. So at the moment, we've got blank A1 landscape selected. If I zoom out here, you'll be able to see that. So it places a gray, or rather a grayed out representation of the page size here. The idea basically is because it's creating this on a worksheet in your project, it doesn't necessarily know the extents of the layout that you want to put it on. And so this is a sort of a proxy for the size of paper that you want to put it on. If you set it to the same size as the layout you want to put it on, it will keep it all within the size that you want using the margins that you want. So if I go back in here and say, actually the layout that I want to use is say A3 landscape instead. We've got margins of 20 mils all around. That looks fine. We'll hit OK and tell it that we do want to update. And what it will do is it'll change the size of that sort of virtual piece of paper that it's placing it on, and then refit everything in there. So we can see it's placed one page here and then a second page next to it and a third and so on until it uses them all up. And now we can place this worksheet on 3 different sheets and just crop it for each one that we want it placed on. So that's what the option for the layout does there. The list of page sizes that you see here, by the way, are just from your current set of masters. So anything that is currently set up as a master, you will see it available here as a layout size. Dimensions cover the dimensioning on the joinery items that you could see there. By default, we dimension the overall size, the shape, so that is if we have a, say, an angled, or as you can see in the diagram there, like a peaked top to some of the windows and doors, it will dimension that shape difference. The sash, so you can see on the windows, it is dimensioning the difference between the main sash and the side sash there, and the sill height as well, which you can see below them there. We can also turn on a rough opening option as well to dimension that. We can set what the spacing is for the dimensions. We can also show the datum label on that sill height if we want. And if I press the dimension settings button, we can also control how the dimension chains themselves work as well. So we could change the way that those look. So we could put dots on them instead of the sort of slashes that we have. We can change the way those work. We can change the font that is used, for instance, and we'll hit OK on that, and then OK on this. We will tell it that we do want to update, and that will go through and make those changes. So you can see we've got this whatever you call it, this blob thing on the dimension, and the different font is selected. And then down at the bottom, you can see we're also labeling the datum that they are measured to as well. In almost all cases in this project, they will be to sill base, because that's what I have used on, I think, all of the joinery in this project. But if they are, oh no, this one's to ground floor here. So this one obviously is, the door is placed relative to the ground floor instead of to the wall base. So you can see that reflected there. And then the last part, which is also the biggest part, is the joinery items control. So this lets us choose how each individual item that we have placed in there will actually present. So we've got show exterior side selected here at the moment, which is what we're seeing. So we're seeing the outside of all of the windows and doors. If you want to switch that to the interior side, you can do. And if you want to have the inside and the outside, for some reason, maybe you want the inside for some and the outside for others, you could just get it to show both as well, which will just show two views. And then we've got little labels that we can select below, which will tell you which side is which when they are displayed. You can also set the spacing between the two if you have both sides turned on. And we can also set it to use shaded elevations rather than just line work, which is what it defaults to do there. Below that, we have the information that is shown for each of the items. So we've got the element ID and the master ID if you have one. So that's for hot links. Type code if we have one. We haven't looked at the styles yet. We'll be doing that next week. But this will bring in the style code here if you are using them. The renovation status can be listed, and the total collated items as well. So on the items where there are two, it will, instead of just listing the two IDs, it will say two items, and then it will list the ID. So we can turn on all of those for now, just so you can see those. And then we can define the font settings. And then over on the right, we control how the alignment is done for the schedule items, and then also how the notes display. So if you want notes to display at all, if you want the categories to show on the notes, and then the font settings for those notes. And we'll apply some notes in a moment. So I'll just hit OK on that and let it update again so that you can see how that looks. Probably not going to fit many in on each sheet this time, so we'll get a few, but here we go. So you can see the shaded view now that I turned that on. We've got our X and int labels here, and then it shows us both of the elevation views there. You can also see below it says existing for these. I think almost all of them will be existing in this particular project. Yeah. So we say existing, then the amount of items, and then in brackets we see the ID of the items. You can see on some of them we see op, which just means that it is handed rather than it means that, that we've flipped them, basically, opposite. Existing one, existing one. I can't find the one that we had. Oh, there it is here. Existing two items, you can see there. And then it lists 204 and 215. So that is the main settings for the schedule. And you should be able to sort of mix and match settings there to produce something that looks the way that you want it to. The other thing that you may want to do is add notes to these schedule items. Obviously, you could just use the label tool or the text tool to draw something down on here, but we can be a little bit smarter with our notes. using the schedule notes. So I'm going to open the schedule notes palette here, which is just a floating palette. And this is designed to work in a very similar way to the keynotes tool, our keynotes tool. So if you're used to that, you'll kind of already be used to how this works to some extent. So we've got this floating palette here, and I can open up the manager for that, and I can set up some notes. So I'll create a couple of new categories. We'll call this one hardware. This one can be finish. This one can be glazing. So these are different categories or folders of notes, and then we'll create a couple of new notes. So I'll just throw a few in there. And for the finish, we'll go paint white. And aluminium. We'll put both of those into the finish category. Single glazed. Those three, and we'll put those into the glazing category. And then what have we got left? Hardware, deadlock. Let's add complete. And we'll put those both in our hardware folder. Now, similarly too with the CI Tools Keynotes tool, you can import and export this database of notes as well. So generally you wouldn't be creating these on the fly like I just did. You will have a standard set of notes that you use all the time that you can put into all of your projects by exporting them from the one that you've written them in and importing them into everything else. So you won't have to do this most of the time, or at least you'll only have to do it once and then use it everywhere else. So we're just going to hit OK here. And what we can do now is we can select any of our joinery items in the schedule, and we can annotate them by just double clicking on the notes we want. So we can say, with this one, we're going to use paint white. Whoops, I'm going to turn on live edit, sorry. You can edit live and you can edit manually. We probably won't cover editing manually, but I just want to edit live, so it just means it'll make the changes right away. So with that element selected, we double click on the note and it automatically adds the note here. So we can go through, we can say paint white. These will be single glazed, and we are not going to be using a kick plate. Let's put a deadlock on there, and annotates them in that way. So now if we ever refresh the schedule or have any other schedule that this appears in, these are actually part of the window that we have placed them on. So this will appear in any place that this particular window shows in a schedule. So if you have multiple schedules where it appears, it'll show in all of them. We can also go back to the actual window itself. So if I choose this option here to go to the 3D view of the selected joinery item, we can have a look in the settings for the actual window. And if you look down at CI Tools schedule notes, which will be right at the very bottom, you will see those schedule notes that we attach to it here. And it also means that you can go the other way as well. So if I come over here to window 106, I can add schedule notes this way. So we could say this one is aluminium and it's double glazed. And we'll say no hardware, but we'll add a custom note saying that this one has shutters on it or something. So this is useful for if you have a sort of a one-off note that you don't want to create a new note in the list for, but you still want it to show in your notes here. We can just add one on the fly there. We hit OK there and go back into our schedule. Not going to be able to find it, am I? Let's just refresh our schedule. I'm going to set this back to exterior so that we can see what we're doing a bit more easily. And I'm going to make the page a bit bigger so it's easier to find. We'll let that update, and then we can go and find our new schedule notes there. So that's the one that we placed them on before in the actual schedule, and 106 is down over here, and you can see shutters cedar that we just created on the fly, and then category finish, aluminium, category glazing, double glazed is placed here. So it makes it really nice and easy to annotate your windows and doors. You can do it either in the schedule or on the actual windows and doors themselves. You could set those up to be sort of the defaults that you use all the time or something like that, so they always know what notes are included and that sort of thing. Just makes it nice and easy to get those annotations on there. All right, it looks like that's all I have time for today, which is good. That covered everything. What we're going to look at next week is the styles. This will probably be the last in the windows and doors sessions, unless I think of something else. But as you may have seen if you've already used these, if you go to the configuration setting at the top of the window and door settings, you've got this interface here, and this is the styles interface to allow you to use preset styles of windows and doors, which you can see here. So what we'll do next week is we'll go over how this works and why it might be useful to you. We'll show you how to use the existing styles that are in there, and I'll also show you how to make your own styles as well, so that you can build up a catalog of styles and then never have to enter the dimensions or settings for any windows or doors manually again. You'll just choose the style that you've already made in advance. All right, I'm just going to quickly check and see if we've got any questions before I finish up. So if you do have any questions, just enter those in the chat panel now, and I will see if I can answer those live. Okay. Well, looks like no questions at this stage, so that's nice and easy. If you do think of anything else that you wanted to ask, or as I said before, if you think of any webinar topics that you would like me to cover at some stage, please do email us at nz.support@centralinnovation.com. That will make its way through to me. As maybe just if you have a suggestion or something, say, hey, I've got a suggestion, the CI Tools webinars or something, that'll make its way through. And yeah, always on the lookout for the kind of thing that you want to see during these sessions. So please let me know. Otherwise, thanks for coming, everyone. And I hope to catch you at the next one. See you.